Welcome to the RSI Trade of the Day. My name is Benjamin Poole, head trader here at Verified Investing, and we've got a great show. I'm going to go over the Bitcoin dominance chart in addition to Apple, NVO, and a couple other ones. But the first thing I want to do is go over our recap. So we had a trade. This was not based on the RSI. This was based on an oversold condition and the fact that this thing was dropping, and this was the trade desk. And so I gave you some key support levels, and I said, kind of be cautious on this. And, if it closes below our entry price on a 15-minute closing basis, let's go ahead and stop out of that trade. So unfortunately, it ended up stopping out before getting to our 3 to 5% target. On the upside, it did get to 2.5%. So it was a good move off of the lows, or at least off of that initial dip. But then it just kept flushing throughout the rest of the day. Finally got a decent bounce, but still, there's still so much weakness in this chart that I would say stay away from it from now. So let's go ahead and go over the recap. So here's the chart of TTD. I was mentioning pre-market that, we had this entry price at 55.13, and this thing just kept flushing. Finally got down to our original entry price, and I said, all right, this is great. It did flush out about 1.5%, 2%, and then got this nice bounce. It stopped right here at 56.49. Our entry price again was 55.13, and look at this. Got about a 2.5% bounce. And again, because it was so oversold, I was looking for about a 3 to 5% bounce. But this red bar candle was just way too much for it. And then look at what happened. It just kind of cratered. This is about where our stop out was. So it wasn't a terrible stop out. It was just a small stop out. But then you just kept flushing. Finally got a bounce. Tried to get back above this, above our entry price, but then slowly faded. And look at this thing. It is staying weak on the day. I was actually anticipating getting into this because of the RSI today. If it was negative RSI divergence all day, or it had, positive RSI divergence if it stayed below the 30, but it didn't. It got up to the 70. See what happened? All this price consolidation right here, and then all of a sudden it just started tanking. So it's a good thing that we stopped out of this. If you were in it, you could have taken a 2.5%. Next time, you could always take a stop at break even if you're entering this trade. But overall, I think that it is going down. Let's go ahead and look at the daily time frame on the trade desk. So one thing to keep in mind when you're trading the RSI is you want to make sure that it's not within 3 to 5 days of earnings. Just because 3 to 5 days after earnings, it doesn't really give you an indication of what's going on in the relative strength index because of such a big move. So if you were interested in getting into TTD, if it gets down to around the $50 level, you've got this minor gap fill right here, $50.05. And then you got a significant gap fill at 48.63. Overall, I still like the chart for a bounce, but again, give it 3 to 5 days to get that bounce. Okay, Palantir, I've gone over a couple of different times. Look at this. Palantir just keeps inching up. Now it's about around the 80 on the RSI. I still like my upside target around a $90. $190 for Pierce, and then expect a rollover to this upswing trend line, at least to get back down to around the 50, maybe even 48 because of the strength of this thing. But eventually this thing will roll over. And again, entry price is at $190.05. I've still got that. I love that for a swing long. ALB, I'm going to go over today. Look at this this setup. You've got this beautiful price consolidation right here, and then a nice move higher. You're starting to get negative RSI divergence. But one thing that I'm noticing on the intraday charts, let me go ahead and zoom in, is you've got this negative RSI divergence, but what happens to the price action? It just continues higher. I love to see charts like this. The only thing is it was Friday, and then all of a sudden you had this huge sell-off, and it did pierce, got down to the 20 on the relative strength index. So this was setting up beautifully for a trade of the day. Unfortunately, it did flush below the 30, and so it kind of takes away the magic of the relative strength index staying above the 70 or above the 30. So unfortunately, we can't use that. But I want you to notice something. Because of the relative strength index stayed so high for so long, look at ALB now. ALB in the pre-market is headed higher. And it got up to $84.58. So what I'm looking at is, okay, so let's check out the daily time frame. You've got this beautiful downsloping trend line. You had this resistance at 84.58. That's where this the price action got to. So it's still due for a little bit of a pullback. So if you were going to enter it, you would want to get in at this high pivot point. Now, this is likely what's going to happen is because you broke out, you haven't retraced, you broke out, and now if you get to this double top area, it's likely to flush through that and probably get to this gap fill right around 88.72. So that would, for me, that would be a great place to enter. This is not the trade of the day, but that's a great example of how the relative strength index can stay high for a long time. And it kind of gives you an idea of, kind of gives you an idea of what's going to happen the next day in the charts. Strong stock on the day, next day expects a bounce, but then eventually a pullback when the institutions stop all that buying pressure. All right, so let's go ahead and go over Bitcoin dominance. This is a beautiful chart, you guys. So there's two different ways to look at this chart. You've got the this beautiful upsloping parallel channel. Now, what some investors do is they put on the logarithmic chart. So it changes the entire structure of this upsloping parallel channel. So you would want to readjust this and look at this. Still beautiful, beautiful, beautiful upsloping parallel channel, even with logarithmic. Now you would extend this up to the top a little bit more, but it hits. Now let's turn on the relative strength index. Beautiful positive RSI divergence. You had this huge sell-off in the altcoin markets. This is a thing of beauty. It had this bounce right here at the 80 or 60%, got down to the lower end of this upsloping parallel channel. Because this is such a long-term parallel channel, you can play the 70, and now you can expect a little bit more of a sell-off in the altcoin. So if you guys are long, or if you guys are bullish on, dang it, did it again. If you guys are bullish on the altcoins and Bitcoin, keep in mind that the Bitcoin dominance, as market share starts pulling out of the altcoins, they start running into Bitcoin. But that doesn't necessarily mean that all of it's going to run into Bitcoin. What could happen is money starts flowing out of Bitcoin, can drop the price of Bitcoin. And then once that price drops, the altcoins get scared and the money flows out of that quicker than out of Bitcoin, especially because there's so many more of them. That'll get the Bitcoin dominance chart to rise quite substantially. So let's see where the next pivot top is. So if you guys are, again, long on these altcoins, a place for a pullback or a bounce in the altcoins would be right around 62, 65 as far as the percentage of the Bitcoin dominance. Okay, NVO. NVO is a great idea, or a great chart to look at when you're looking at positive RSI divergence. So here's an example of positive RSI divergence, right? So you give it 3 to 5 days after earnings. Then you have this low pivot right here. And then you have a higher low on the RSI, but a lower low on the relative strength index. A couple of our traders here got into this trade, took about a 10 to 15% victory on this. But look at this, positive RSI divergence, which means that higher highs on the relative strength index, lower highs on NVO. And this was a thing of beauty, right into, look at all this support in this area. It flushed this area, this double bottom area, indicating that, okay, so we're going to try to flush out the weak hands before this nice bounce. So if you guys are long on NVO, you could look to take profits at about the 50 or even the 55 on the relative strength index. Now, if this continues higher, can bust through some of these long-term resistance levels now, then NVO could even head up. I don't know if it gets up to $69, but that could be a place to look for. Okay, so now let's get into the trade of the day. So the trade of the day is going to be on Apple. I was showing you guys how ALB kind of stayed really positive throughout the day on the relative strength index on the 1 minute chart. So Apple did the same thing, but Apple continued this. So let's go ahead and go to the intraday chart on Apple. It did have a little bit of a pullback today, earlier already, which is unfortunate, but check this out on the relative strength index. Look at this. Beauty. Thing of beauty. You had negative RSI divergence, but what happened? You had a little bit of a sell-off in Apple, and then continued slow grind higher. It couldn't take out this low pivot point here, but this is what you guys are looking for. Check out these charts, you guys. They're telling you something. They're saying, they're painting a picture for you. All right, lots of institutional buying, lots of buying pressure. The relative strength index is staying above the 30. Okay, what does this mean? That means it's a really strong stock, favors a bounce. So I was actually anticipating it going up higher, but look at this. So if we switch to the daily time frame, here's where our entry price will be. So you've got this low pivot point, which is what I'm not going to be interested in. I'm going to take it at this gap fill at $239.07. This gap fill is where Apple is likely to head to based on the fact that it's been so overbought on Monday. So expect a bounce. Trade of the day, short Apple at $239.07 and wait for it. So Apple's not going to give you a 3 to 5% pullback, but you should get a nice $2.50 to $3 pullback on Apple. So maybe enter it here and exit at this high pivot right here at this high wide range red bar candle. Okay. So when you guys are checking out charts, look in the intraday, look at the 1 minute chart, and let's start examining what's going on in these charts and see if we can get more of these continued setups that are charts that are going up into resistance. Relative strength index stays above the 30 in the 70 range, and we'll see what happens the next day. So that's what I have for you guys. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. I really appreciate you guys. Please hit the like, subscribe, and ring that bell so you can get notified every morning at 8:45 when the market opens. And please stay tuned. Gareth Soloway has an exciting game plan for you guys coming up in less than 3 minutes. So we'll see you guys next time in the charts. Take care.